Ruslan.
For those folks that are watching this and they're like, you know what, I struggle with overthinking. Maybe there's some shame that they struggle with. Maybe there's some trauma they've experienced. Let's talk about how the kind of the first part where we talk about, hey, how do you kind of turn down those negative soundtracks? And it seems like you go through this thought experiment where you ask yourself, like, are these things absolutely true that you're telling yourself, and letting your mind go to that place, and then probably say, no, it's not as bad as you made it out to be. It almost reminds me of the book. I don't know if you ever read the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F. And it's this similar thing, like when you're overthinking, like, okay, let's go to that worst case scenario. Yeah. And when you think of the worst case scenario in any situation, you probably go, okay, that's probably not going to happen. And even if it does, it's still not the end of the world. Can we talk to those folks right now who are maybe struggling with overthinking, struggling with the shame, the negative soundtracks, I don't think I'm good enough. I'm not worth it. I don't know how to earn more. And what's some words that you would give to them?
Yeah, I mean, the three questions you ask around a broken soundtrack. And if you want to find out if you have one, here's a 30-second activity. Write down a goal. Write down a desire. Write down a hope. Write down a wish. It can be something small. I want to start a podcast. It can be I want to write a book. I want to move to San Diego. I want to ask that person out. I want to get another job, whatever. Write down a wish and then listen to the first thoughts that come next. Listen to your reaction, because every reaction is an education. And if your reaction is you're too old, who are you to do that? You'd never be able to pull it off. YouTube's too complicated. That's for young people, whatever. If it's not positive, it's probably a broken soundtrack. So when you find one, you ask it three questions. Number one, is it true? Is the story I'm telling myself about myself true? One of the greatest mistakes you can make is assuming all your thoughts are true. And we do that. We think because I had the thought, it must be a fact. So the first question, is it true? Second question, is it helpful? Is it helpful? Because there's some things that are true that aren't helpful. Like it might be true you don't know how to do a podcast right now, but if you tell yourself that 100 times a day, is that helpful? Like if you tell yourself 100 times a day, I don't know how to do a podcast, I don't know how to do it, like, do you feel encouraged at the end of that or discouraged? So is it helpful? Third question is it kind? In simplest terms, if you said it to a friend, would they still want to be a friend? And what's interesting in doing a lot of podcasts about this, often what happens is in the middle, it turns from a book discussion into a podcast host discussion. We start talking about the podcast host. And I was on a podcast and the guy got quiet when I said, is it kind idea? And he said, oh no. And I said, what? And he said, well, I've had the #1 podcast in my space for the last 9 months. And I've been telling myself, you're just lucky, you're just lucky, you're just lucky. And he said, if a friend came over and they had worked on a podcast for 9 months, I'd never say that to them. So why am I saying it to myself? So those are the three questions. And if you can't say yes to those three questions, it's something you need to retire.
Wow. That's good. Yeah, man. That is, I think a lot of people needed that true, kind, helpful. And I like how you paralleled it to, like, if you were to say this to a friend,
oh yeah, they'd hate you. They'd never go to coffee with you. Like imagine if you texted a friend that negative statement as many times as you tell yourself. Like imagine if we're working on a book on soundtracks for teenagers, because so many parents have said, hey, wait a second. If I could have learned this when I was 14, it would have changed my life. So me and my 2 high school daughters are writing a book about soundtracks for teenagers. And we've been talking about, if you as a teenager tell yourself, I failed my last exam, as you study for the next one, is that helpful? It's not. And then you go, is it kind? If one of my daughters texted one of their friends 100 times one day and said, hey, remember you failed your last exam. Like that person would be like, this is a crazy person I need to block. Like they're so mean. So then why do we allow ourselves to do it to ourselves? And I think the problem is most people don't understand they get to choose their thoughts. Most people think a thought is something they have, not something they hone. And when you discover that you have the power and the permission to choose what you think, like that's when the game changes.
Wow. That's so good, man. The chat is like, yo, this is powerful. The brain emoji, the emoji can explode. Yeah. So this is good. Can we kind of connect this to the ethos of our faith and why this is important? Because I think what I see in many Christian circles is that we kind of go to two extremes. One extreme is the hyper prosperity, and the other extreme is the hyper poverty. One extreme is you deserve a Bentley, you deserve these things, right? And the other side is you're a sinner, you deserve hell, and that's all you're deserving of. And it seems like we don't talk about this healthy middle ground that we're talking about here, which is it's all connected, and to me it's out of an understanding of the gospel and the good news of Jesus that I should be more kind to myself, because you measure the value of something based on what people are willing to pay for it, and Jesus laid down his life for me. That's the ultimate sacrifice. Therefore, my life is valuable. How would you glue some of these ideas to folks who are coming from being followers of Jesus, but maybe they're wrestling with it from a theological framework?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd look at it like, what does Christ say? He says, love others as you love yourself. If you don't love you, you can't love anyone else. Like, that's the bottom line. And unfortunately, in the church, we've edited out that last part, the love yourself. I see people have shirts that say, love God, love people. And that's great. You did 2/3. But if you don't love yourself, you can't love other people. Like, and that's not a spiritualist, self-care. That's just biblical. Jesus says, as you've loved yourself. If you hate yourself, you cannot love your neighbor. I didn't say that. Christ said that. So that behooves us to go, okay, well, let me make sure that I love myself so that I can love others. And it's not like you have to do one perfectly, then you can start the other one. They're all happening at the same time. As far as like where our thought life impacts that, I mean, Romans 12:2 says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Come on.
Like, your mind is transformed. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. I mean, Proverbs 23:7 says, as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. So the idea that your thoughts matter and your thoughts have power, like, that's not unique to me. That's not, something new. That's something that there's so many biblical passages that talk about that. I mean, think about how Philippians 4:8 says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And so for me, our thought life, there's so many verses that your thought life becomes your life. Like, and if you can remember that, then you'll actually invest in it. Then you'll, the challenge is your thoughts turn into your actions, turn into your results. And most people over focus on their actions and try to white knuckle them and never deal with the underlying thoughts that are steering the whole ship. And then they go, oh, why do I keep? And so it matters.
The great modern philosopher, Mike Tyson, had this quote that I thought was really good. He said it on Valuetainment. He said, self-love is discipline. You have to, if you love yourself, you have to love yourself enough to discipline yourself. And I think discipline starts with your thought life and what are you thinking about? Because again, like you said, that's going to determine how you feel. How you feel is going to determine your actions. Your actions are going to determine your habits, and your habits is who you are. The things you do every day is who you are.
Kingstream Entertainment, Ruslan.
Hey, thank you so much for making it till the end of this video. Remember to hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. I wanted to tell you about a free upcoming course I am putting together at mastermyhabits.com. When you sign up right now, you'll be the first to be notified about the course. And in the meantime, you'll immediately get access to a playlist going over my journey on how I went from addiction to freedom forming habits. So make sure to hit that link in the description. I'll see you on the next video.